Almost live, or maybe already live. Sometimes I'm not totally sure how this works. It's thinking about it. It's thinking about it. Okay, and we're live. And actually, we may have been live the entire time that I was saying we were thinking about it. I don't really know. So basically, when we go live, no one asked. I have to click a button here, but then sometimes I have to go into another tab and click go live in YouTube Control Studio. But sometimes when I click a button here, it just magically talks to YouTube Control Studio and it like goes live the way it's supposed to, in which case the button turns to end stream. And that's the thing that I have to check. Welcome. We're going to be talking about The Crown today and maybe also The Bachelorette, maybe just a little bit. What if we do? That's fine. That's fine. You know, like we're not TV snobs here.
Yeah.
Anyways, I'm going to put The Crown.
Oh, you're not.
I'm not. I'm not a TV snob. Hold on. Let me see if I can like, there we go. Okay, cool. I've got the picture there, just like partially covering my mouth. Good. So we're talking specifically about The Crown seasons 1 and 2, but let me first go to Kate. Kate, first of all, say hi, and then also tell me how far you are in The Crown, because you may have passed me.
Hello. Yeah, so yesterday I did message you saying I finished season 2. Mm-hmm. Fun thing, I'm now in season 4. So I just started like the first episode of season 4 today.
Oh, you definitely passed me. I literally am on episode 3 of season 3, and I just started episode 3, season 3. However, I do feel like my marathon game is going pretty well. So by next week, I think I'll be done with season 4. And there is no season 5 out yet. Right?
Okay. Not yet.
Okay.
So by the way, I think you're about to meet my new favorite character. Just a heads up. I feel like you'll know who it is when you meet them. Princess Anne.
We get
like she's actually been in the whole show the whole time. But yeah. So now like her and Charles are now in their late teens in the 3rd season. And she comes in the 3rd episode, I think it is.
Okay.
And has like a semi-major part in the 3rd episode. She has like 4 lines, and I immediately fall in love with her.
I am so excited to meet Princess Anne. And in the end of season 2, you know, we started to see a little bit of Charles, but I'm figuring we start to see more of him in season 3. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Like it's season 3 is it's a very distinct. There's a lot less like. There still is a personal life of Elizabeth, but it's not as much, and a lot of that time goes to Charles. So.
Okay. And then we meet Princess Diana in season 4, right?
Yes.
Played by Elizabeth Debicki of Tennant.
Well, I think she's the season 5 and 6, Elizabeth Debicki.
Oh, okay. So the season 4 one is not. I have intentionally not looked at pictures because, well, I've seen like a couple pictures just like in passing on Twitter, but I've been like intentionally when I have seen like bits and pieces of The Crown, especially now that I started watching it, I've been intentionally not really looking at pictures because like obviously it's historical, so there's like no spoilers. It can't be like, you know, spoilers.
Somebody died. Woo.
Yeah, like Queen Elizabeth hasn't died yet. You know, like whatever. Like that's not gonna get, but. Like seeing everybody is kind of like the piece that I don't know yet. And I had seen Diana like super briefly in passing on Twitter, but not enough to look and see if it was Elizabeth Debicki. But okay, cool. So she's going to play the season 5+ version.
5 and 6.
5 and 6.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
So are you ready to hear my entire rant about season 1 and 2?
I'm so excited to hear your entire rant of season 1 and 2. Can I pester you with questions?
Yes, of course.
Okay.
Where would you like to start?
I was doing a fake mic. I've got a literal mic here. I can like fit in. That just made this move. Hold on.
I have several mics in my room.
My joke is like being ruined by my inability to handle technology. Okay. welcome. I'm going to give questions to Kate once she
I
gets back. Oh,
didn't, but
there
I'm
she
going to
is.
play along with this joke.
Perfect. There you go. So you've got your soapbox mic. I've demonstrated that I do
Yes.
have a mic here that I'm manhandling. Carrie in the chat says, "Good evening, folks." Good evening, Carrie.
Hi,
Carrie, if you
Carrie.
watch The Crown, I would very much like to hear your thoughts on it. If you don't watch The Crown, I also would like to hear your thoughts on it, just based on what you hear us say and what you see on Twitter and other social media sites. So, question number one. In seasons 1 and 2, you have a particular set of cast, and in seasons 3 plus, the cast switches. So, speaking only about season 1 casting, how do you feel about the casting? Do you feel like the younger version casting was spot on for everybody? Did they miss the mark for anybody? Is one choice better than another?
I don't think everybody looks identical. It's not, or at least for season 1, it's not like on point. But I would say that their acting definitely covers that gap. It makes it very believable that they are that person, to a point that I'm like, okay, I have the pictures and they don't look super similar, but it's well enough acted that it doesn't really matter. Um, I think they did a really good job, especially with Claire Voy training to do her voice. Her voice was spot on for how
Yeah.
she sounded in her early years. I remember, because for a long time I had no interest in watching the show. I actually remember years ago I saw an interview of her talking about that, and like apparently that was extensive training. It was like a large portion of what she did was practice that accent, and apparently yes was really really hard for her to do.
Yes, the term yes.
Yeah, the word yes is really hard.
Hmm. I thought that the vocals were like, I mean, to me, who I'm not an accent expert, and I have what I believe to be a very typical flat American accent that is not like coastal specific. Like I don't have a southern accent or western, whatever. Um,
Mm-hmm.
to me, it seemed to like ring all the right bells of like sounding like from a like old but not like old English, um
Yes.
but also like not like posh but like upper crust, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Well, and it was very much very high class, very proper, but it wasn't stuck. It didn't feel stuffy or as um like it was not. It didn't feel like caricature. It felt
Right.
pretty accurate.
Right. Okay. So piggybacking off of that though, we're talking a little bit about the vocals. How did you feel about the costumes? Because I seem to recall in a prior discussion, may or may not have revolved around Pride and Prejudice, may have been something else, I don't recall. You were talking about how sometimes costumes from certain time periods are just a little bit off or mostly reflect like the modern day when they were made or whatever, and I'm curious what your thoughts were on the costuming and the progression of costuming as years pass, even just within seasons 1 and 2.
I mean, obviously with her, I mean, even to nowadays, as the real Queen Elizabeth, she wears pretty much the same thing. Mm-hmm. So with her, it's very interesting to watch as everybody else's fashion changed. And I would say if you paid attention, because it wasn't like my main focus, but there were occasional characters that had a fashion style, a very iconic style that did catch your attention and would prove like, okay, we're no longer in the 40s or we're no longer in the 50s and we're in the 60s. And it would kind of catch your eye and go, oh, okay. And I mean, more than the fashion actually, because a lot of them are wearing that more stately with dress outfit, and the men are all wearing suits which don't change terribly much, just like in the legs. Mm-hmm. The cars changed a lot. Mm-hmm. So, and of course, hers took a long time to change, and it's still very similar. Everybody else's cars changed drastically from the very beginning to mm-hmm. the end of season 2.
That's a really good point.
Because in the end of season 2, you're at 64, and the 60s had a very iconic like silhouette for their cars, whereas you started in the late 40s, and it was very much like we're still in World War II style cars.
I didn't even notice the car thing. I definitely noticed the costumes, whose changes, how hers didn't. And I think what also stood out to me is towards the end, at least, of the second season, or maybe just in the second season in general, also how she walked. Bishop, do you really need to hop up on my? You guys can't see him, but Bishop's right here, hopping up on my keyboard. Now he's at my mic. Thank you. Very cool. Um, you can hop on. Jump for it. You guys see Bishop now? There we go. Bishop just wanted to say hi and chase my nail file. No, it's fine. No, you can just sit right there. It's cool. That's great. Thanks. um, when towards like middle to end of second season is when I started to notice it, that she walked in like this very clear, recognizable way that was different than other characters, that I think was really intentional. That reminded me of like old videos that I've seen of Queen Elizabeth, or video. Why do I sound 84 years old? Clips that I've seen of Queen Elizabeth, you know, back in the day, and even still kind of how she walks today, if that makes sense, but like younger.
Like
I don't know.
She glides, that like sideward glide.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna, as I was watching this, I don't know if you've seen this, probably not, but there's a show that came out a few years ago called Victoria. Surprisingly, I know it's shocking, it's about Queen Victoria. I know we're all shocked, so am I. In watching that, there was a lot of similarities drawn. If I could go into like an hour-long argument, like just fury about like the things, like the comparison between Prince Albert and Prince Philip, and like the similarities, but the difference in how they presented them. Ooh. But anyway, they did it the similar thing where like she became more confident and she stood straighter and walked more gracefully. And I'm sure that they were both raised with like grace training and things like that. They were all trained. They were both trained to become queen. Mm-hmm. But there's a certain level of television communication where even if you were trained to walk like that, they don't want you to see it like that. They want you to witness them truly becoming confident in themselves because of their actual experience rather than them just being trained to walk a certain way.
Mm-hmm. I have a question based on a comment that you just made. And I feel as if we broke the ice, and we had, you know, some pleasant little comments made about, you know, the costumes and the casting and everything was so lovely. However, it did come out this week that somebody attached to Buckingham Palace, or like the whatever, thinks that there should be a label at the beginning of these episodes saying that this is fictional, which I just found interesting because you have a bone to pick on that front, in fact, regarding how they portray my personal least favorite character, the star, shall we say, of this week's Salty Cammie Corner, Prince Philip. So please do share with the class what they did to make this man so insufferable.
Okay, so part of it, obviously, I've already mentioned, is the easily comparable similarities between him and Prince Albert. They are princes in their own right, in their own country, yada, yada, yada.
Okay.
So they presented him in The Crown as being somewhat savage in the sense of him not understanding his obvious role he would have to play as the Queen's husband. In the time he was marrying her, in the time he decided to marry her, he knew that she would eventually become queen, and he would have to assume the role of the queen's husband, but not the king. Mm-hmm. He knew that. That was already a thing. And history tells us, because I've done the research, that he was not a jerk about wanting to bow for her when the coronation had happened. That was not true.
I was wondering about that.
He did not care. He was fully okay with it because he grew up in the monarchy and had respect for what that ceremony meant, he was not as obtuse to it. Now, of course, the Greek monarchy was not as big and historic as the British monarchy, but he wasn't oblivious to the importance of it or to the idea of it. So for them to make him so impotent on the whole idea that he had to bow to his wife, it made no sense. They just wanted drama where there didn't need to be any drama.
Okay, so I have a question though.
Yes, he was the guy. Yes.
Did he cheat on her? As so far as we know. Speculation is welcome.
As so far as we know, so there's some speculation. There was some hearsay that he was in a place at the time that he could have. And there were some people that were already not friends with him that said, hey, look what I heard. So there's tons of hearsay possibility, but there's not a lot of proof.
He did go on that world tour thing, right?
Yes, he did. Okay. Also, that had a lot of errors in it too, though. So his whole friendship with that guy that did get divorced, that whole timeline was wrong. Which I don't really mind that they kind of mess with the timeline a bit. It's for storytelling purposes, fine. But they involved him way more in that story than actually happened. So apparently it was very much so the friend that got divorced from his wife, the show involved him more in that storyline, Prince Philip more in that storyline than he actually was in real life.
Okay.
And there were some headlines about him being connected to this guy because he was his private secretary and all that, but really it was just kind of it just was just because of the connection rather than any look at the similarity of our situation and imply that there's some awesome infidelity in my marriage too just because of it. It wasn't, yeah, he was probably mentioned in some headlines, but it wasn't to the same extent that they made it in the show.
Okay. Here's the thing. I understand that I am of the audience that would be predisposed to dislike him because I am predisposed to find a male villain, right? I acknowledge my bias, but it is what it is. And here's the thing. It's not just he didn't want to bow to her. I don't care about that. Maybe he was just anti-monarchy, join the club. Or, if he cheated on her, I would write him off as trash, but it wouldn't be he's this antagonistic character that I can't stand. You know what I mean? It'd be oh, how novel, another guy who cheated on his powerful wife. Shocker. You know what I mean? It's the thing, okay, so his toughen up stance with Charles, that whole thing of I actually did look at, first of all, I could be wrong about everything. Acknowledge, even my mediocre Google searches. But apparently Prince Charles did go to that one school and described it as a terrible experience. And it was his dad that wanted him to go there. What now?
I did see that too.
Okay. So there's that. And it sound from what I could understand, it did sound as if so Queen Elizabeth did have children, did get pregnant and have children while occupying the role of queen, after her ascension and coronation or whatever, right? And it sounds like there were times where Prince Philip was not always a super present dad or something. I don't know. Maybe what's bothering me is just how whiny and self-centered he seems, an eternal child himself. Granted, I'm only at the beginning of season 3, so I haven't got to see the older version of him yet. So it's just the Matt Smith version, which he did a great job. It's nothing against the casting. It's just he comes across as very whiny and self-centered, and why can't you also kind of cater to me, when it's do you understand the position that you're in right now and the position she's in right now? I don't know.
Yeah, the whole entire 1 and 2, the problems I had, like, so nothing against Matt Smith. I think he is a good actor, all that and the other. I don't like when they had him smirk.
Yes.
Okay. Whenever he smirked, it was very antagonistic. And I know some of the times it was meant to be charming because she would smile afterwards.
That was
but
the
then
thing.
Some of them, that was okay, the same smirk. She got upset about it.
Right. That was the thing. You captured it exactly. It's like when he would be what I would perceive to be whiny, cocky, childish, whatever, they would show her being like finding it endearing. Or when he was being like slightly antagonistic, passive aggressive, a smart ass, whatever, they would show her being confused by it. And they frequently showed her being kind of like confused and I don't know what it, like preferring straightforward interactions and not reading, like not reading and responding with teeth to things that are like thinly veiled or passive aggressive or whatever. Because of that, it's particularly frustrating to see her with somebody who does use passive aggression, whining, backhanded insults, secrecy, just in general, like any secrecy, any caginess, any didn't tell her this or that, any wasn't straightforward about whatever, because she's not somebody who can take it. Like if you see a guy like this with Margaret who can dish it right back out, it's a little bit less it's a little bit more comfortable to watch. But seeing this done to Elizabeth, not just because of the position she's in, but I guess I could phrase it as who she is, it was really frustrating. And when he would try to be charming and it would be annoying and he would think it was charming and she would also respond as if he was charming, that was just like very frustrating to watch.
So part of my issue with it was his acting. I think he was a good actor. I just think he really relied into the smarminess of his charm a little too heavily. And what's also interesting is they kind of played it like over the years he got better about it. Because I would give him this. I would be willing to have said, like, okay, you're not that bad. If like the first few years it would have been like a tough transition. Like maybe people in the court, when I was respectful of him because he is not a consort, he's just a prince. Like they're always used to the queen consorts. There would be a less respect for him. It would have been kind of an infantile, like people would have not have treated him perfectly. I would have understood if he would have been a little up and frustrated about that, a little whiny about that every once in a while, but he wasn't very ill-tempered towards his wife, or if he was only once in a while, he would apologize, and it would be very much like just a normal person having poor reactions on occasion. Mm-hmm. Instead, they just inflamed him being infantile and focused on it, and instead of making it seem like he would regret it or would realize that was not the right move, that was a reactionary feeling, that was not where we should go with this, they would lean into it. Like, why no? And then to have it next to Elizabeth, who honestly would frustrate me too sometimes because she was so unreactionary. And of course she needs to be because she's the queen, but even in her own personal marriage, she wouldn't stick up for herself. Right. And so that was always a little frustrating. Now, what actually frustrated me more was when she wouldn't stick up for herself with Margaret. Sorry. Oh. Yeah. So, but yeah. So, it obviously bothered me when she would kind of just let Philip run over her with all his passive aggression. But a lot of it really wasn't. He was just kind of all around just ill-tempered. And I'm not going to go too much into season 3, but I want to point out season 2 ends in year 64, 1964. Season 3 picks up the same year. The temperament of the two portrayals. I couldn't have pictured two different portrayals. I quite like the new one. It's very weird. And it's the same year. you could have told me that, yeah, that final argument season 2, I feel like it really did kind of push their relationship forward. It was a good argument. There was things said. You could have told me that it made him a little better, but he did not get to make that big of a jump. They just were able to do that because they switched actors.
Right. I have a question for
Because,
you that comes from the
yes.
chat, and I think it relates to this. It's from Carrie. He
Mm-hmm.
says, so if I'm watching this show, would I feel like I'm watching the BBC or MTV or a strange combination of the two? What would you say is your answer to that?
So, BBC is in like a BBC show because I don't like BBC News. You're not watching the news.
Right.
It's not. It's too soap opera to be watching like a documentary in the news. But it has like very much like it is going far deeper into their personal emotional lives like an MTV show would. But it's got that like thematic feel of a BBC period drama. It has that let's also like pay respect to the nice scenery and the cars and the dresses, and let's focus on some of the ambience of it all. Like we give some space for that. It's not just like some drama after drama after drama, but it's somewhere in between. But I really wouldn't say it's either. If I had to pick, it's BBC.
I agree.
It's more soap opera. Yeah, it's more soap opera than the typical period drama, but it's not like a full BBC or MTV reality show.
Yeah. The thing that makes it not a BBC show for me is that the storytelling, which is, this is going to sound weird, the storytelling feels American, which makes no sense because it's literally telling an
I get it
extremely.
though.
What now? You agree?
Uh huh.
Okay, good. Okay. Sorry, there's
I
a
agree.
delay. So if I'm sitting and waiting in silence for like a full 30 seconds, it's because there's a delay. And also because my cat literally won't stop attacking my birthday balloons, which are crumbled up on the floor over there, because this is basically like our storage room. Um, so you may wonder, Cammie, why are you filming in the one room that has the ugliest background and your cat is attacking balloons in the corner making noise? I don't know. It's just where we're set up. Okay. The reason why the storytelling feels a little bit American to me is because the pacing is so much faster than like what a BBC drama would be. And also, like you talked about, like, you know, like the scenery and stuff like that, it's still a little bit different in like vibe and tone. And I just, the the way they'll have like situational irony, like it just feels very American as compared to like the situational irony you'd find in like an Austen piece. So it seems
You
so
would
weird
still
to be
have
like
that,
this.
but it's not as
Go ahead.
it's not as over as evidence show. Like there is situational irony in some of period dramas like Austen, but it's not as like spoon fed. Like you have to be paying attention. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
The Crown, it's very spoon fed.
Yes.
It I, when you say like American drama, I've always noticed that a lot of times with American TV, like there's like a lot of time I consider like three big focuses that a show could have: character, plot, or scenery. So like you can either tell a lot of character stories, you can either have a really interesting and packed plot, and you can also have it focus on like the scenery, whether that be like clothes or anything like that. And normally an American show tries to balance all three, include all three, do a big part of all three. Normally British shows I've noticed do two.
Okay.
It doesn't try to focus on all three of them.
And
And
this one kind of
so
does focus on
it
all
feels
three.
like there's yeah, and it because of that, it does feel a lot more busy, kind of American. We're taking off more than we could choose sometimes. And because of that, it feels kind of like there's no quiet moment of relax or tension release. It's all tension all the time.
Mm-hmm. I think the romance that you see in it also comes across as American as compared to like a British style romance novel. Now, if it is just like like it's fictionalized first of all, but if it is frequently borrowing from what the romances were rumored to be like or what elements they had from it, it is still like again then technically based on like real British romances, right? You know, like the whole Princess Margaret thing with, you know, Peter Townsend or whatever apparently was a real thing that happened in some form or whatever. And then her eventually marrying a commoner who was like a photographer or whatever. That's a real thing that happened. And then, like, you know, there's other stuff that happens beyond that. And I like vaguely looked that up because Princess Margaret so far has been my favorite character, although I'm happy to entertain the position that she is a villain. She's still my favorite character though. You know what I mean? Anyways, with
Okay, fair.
okay, okay.
I
And
get it.
then
I can appreciate it.
yeah, with Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip, same thing. Like the romances are technically British romances, but I'm seeing them sold in a very like gritty American TV show light. And the thing is, like your frustration with how Philip is portrayed, that's one of the things that makes me so inclined to be receptive to that, where I'm normally just like, oh, you know, whatever, like I hate the guy, I don't care about redeeming him, it is what it is that I believe the phrase I used when we were discussing this in the chat was like sell me a romance or die. Like I'm very much in that position. I'm very much in that position with TV shows. Like I'm very upfront about what I want. I want a romance, and if I start to like a certain romance or whatever, and then they don't deliver or they deliver a really crappy version of it or whatever, you know, like what's the phrase? My good opinion once lost is lost forever. I'm just like,
Lost
okay,
is lost forever.
yes, that. Um, I'm just like, okay, like you didn't sell me a romance, you're worth nothing to me, die. And this show has yet to sell me a romance that I really love. And the closest they got to it, and I still was like only mediocre on it, was Margaret and Peter. And even that, like, that wasn't like, that was like maybe an appetizer at best. Like, that was not a full romance.
Well, so what always like you wanted a romance, and like I like romance. I'm not gonna lie about that. But what I'm gonna say is like you have to have some amount of like yeah, it's about the crown, but it's about Queen Elizabeth. That's what the show is
Right.
about. And even if it's not like a gung, even if she herself is not a gung ho, let's family this up kind of story. Stories in general are normally about the connections and relationships, even with platonic, workspace, anything like that. Relationships you have with other people, and telling a story through relationships.
Mm-hmm.
With this, obviously, yeah, it's about like her relationship with politicians and the people, but it's mainly about her relationship with her family.
Mm-hmm.
And for us, we're supposed to be the ones rooting for her. And most of the time, I feel like I am. I'm not real. They don't really have a problem rooting for her most of the time. And for us to go 2 seasons, and I feel like she never really had anybody in her corner for 2 whole seasons that's in the family. It felt like a lot. To be honest, the character that was most commonly in her corner for most of the show was either her father, who died in the second episode, or Winston Churchill, who
Right.
was not part of her family. But those were the only two people that never made life exponentially more difficult because they were immature and couldn't understand that she, as even though she's queen, she really doesn't have the power to do what she wants.
Mm-hmm.
She, like they point out, is two people really,
Right.
and the wants and the desires of the sister and the daughter and the mother cannot outweigh the wants and desires of the queen. And even though she wants as a sister to give what she like, give Margaret what she wants and help her mother and help Philip and everybody else, her duty to the entire country. And at that point in time, a large portion of the world had to outweigh it. And so the decision to make every single character consistently antagonistic, well, I expect there's probably a large amount of family drama and problems like that because she does have to make those decisions. It was frustrating that they didn't try to make senators who should have been more understanding, who were raised to understand that way of decision making, were never understanding, were always antagonistic, and it was very frustrating. Because none of them, except like Peter or anybody that was truly outside of the family, none of them were raised in a way of expecting that could have told them they could marry willy-nilly. And they always keep comparing, like, well, he got to marry Philip and she fought for that. Yeah, she fought for that. And there was some some fighting that she had to do. But it's not like the uphill battle of marrying a divorced commoner. He was just a prince of a fallen country. He was already royal. Was it their first choice? No, but he was already royal.
Right.
And I mean, say what you will about whether that's right or wrong, that was the position they were in. And
that was the law.
It's not the same. It's not the same. It's not the same.
And she didn't have the authority to change the law. And actually, I'm really torn when it came to the situation with Margaret and Peter Townsend. Because recall that I said a couple minutes ago that was the closest they got to really selling me on a romance. And even then, I wasn't totally there.
Yeah.
By that, I mean, in terms of like the, the kind of tropey, shippy, whatever stuff they gave them, I was at least buying it. And like, it came across as like valid romance to me, like there was chemistry, whatever there. However, like reading between the lines and using the bare minimum of critical thinking, like the fact that he was divorced, whatever, the fact that he was a commoner, whatever, like I understand the laws with that. What I, in the modern age, am hearing is that there was a guy who grew up around her who was like, what was it, just shy of 20 years older than her, 16, 17, whatever it is, like 2 decades, let's round up, old man, 2 decades older than her, grew up around her. That's called grooming. And she fell in love with him, whatever, to such a degree that she was willing to fight for this, whatever. He left his wife and kids. He left his partner and kids. Let's pretend we don't even care about the divorce thing. He left his adult human partner and the children she bore for him. Like, yeah, whatever. Let's say there was like an affair on whatever side. She probably knew he was already having an emotional affair with a literal child that he's grown up around. Like, everything about it was just like super sketch. And I, for one, who had already absorbed the fact that this is kind of American style storytelling, was kind of surprised they didn't hint at that being a little more sketch than it was. They kept selling me Peter as like a fairly good guy. And I just like, this is kind of an old man preying on a young girl who probably seems like the type of personality where she maybe wanted to act older than her age when she was two. You know what I mean? Like the kind that was like, yeah, like I'm 14 going on 21, how little kids are. And those are the kind of situations where gross pedophilic men will try to excuse their behavior. And like, I don't know, just everything about it was like, I don't feel like we're getting the full story here. Granted, it's fictional, but I don't feel like we're getting the full story there.
Yeah. I mean, I had problems with the fact that he was so much older. Now, I will point out, most of the relationships, the man was older.
Gross,
significantly older.
So gross.
Not like 20 years older.
Isn't it Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip? Aren't they like within just a couple years of each other?
I think he's only like 4 or 5 years older than her. Now,
An
you
improvement.
think about the fact that they met when she was 13. That's a little gross, but they weren't hanging out every weekend
Who,
when she
Philip
was
and
13.
Elizabeth met when
So
she was 13?
Philip, yeah, yes, but they weren't like seeing each other all the time. I think they started like actually seeing each other when she was 17, which is not as weird. I mean, it is
I
kind of weird for
personally,
today's
like, based
standards,
on the
but
time period and everything about it, I don't think it's like if they were just meeting in royal circles and it was like, oh, here's all the, kids
yeah,
under 20, all the girls who have, you know, um above puberty and all the kids under, basically like if they're basically like meeting at the kids table to put it in American terms. We met at the kids
yeah,
table at one, dinner party or something when she was 13 or whatever, and it wasn't like they were, basically raised together. Perfectly fine. If they started dating or whatever when she was like 17 and he was what would it have been like 21 or whatever.
21.
Weird in modern terms because those are very different life stages. But at that point, that was probably not a very different life stage. And she was already, like heir apparent to the throne or whatever they're calling it. Like, I'm here and ready to hate on Philip at the slightest chance, but that age difference in particular doesn't really ring as weird to me as this whole Peter Townsend and Margaret thing. And also, like, if you put that in perspective at the time, like, they would have all kind of, like, Elizabeth also would have probably seen Peter Townsend as like this older guy. You know what I mean? Like this grown
Yeah,
up. Like this was a, like uncle type of figure or whatever, even
yeah,
if they did have more of like a peer family relationship with him or something, like even though they're supposed to be on different, class levels, even if it's still like the age thing is I refuse to entertain the idea that like one can equate a class difference to an age difference. I don't see those as the same thing at
yeah.
all.
That's no. Well, and then you consider that then Margaret, when she actually married, she married a man. They were the same age, with I think
Right.
the same year they were born.
Right.
Um, so it
Which I
does kind
hate
of
the
make you think,
photographer
well,
too,
how?
by the way. Greatly
Yeah,
dislike.
like I like Matthew Good, but I don't like him.
I
Whatever his name
I
is,
feel like I'd
Tony.
seen that actor before in something else. It's nothing against the actor. I don't find that character, like personality wise, I find him repulsive, and perhaps that's why I don't find that character attractive. And I maybe the actor is attractive in real life, and it's just how he's portrayed. But like there, how like sometimes there's like this sort of charming devil type of thing where it's like someone who looks really good but is actually like an asshole or a bad boy or whatever. Like I don't even find him attractive in that sense where I can be like basically it's the two villains that fell in love. You know what I mean? Like if we're seeing Margaret as a villain, which I for one somewhat do, or I guess I say like frequently do, or she's a villain that you can kind of like I want to say feel sorry
Like
for, but that's
and
not a
relate
nice way to
to,
put it. What now?
like and appreciate in a weird
Yeah.
way.
Yeah. Or you just like understand, I'm not having to be like, you're not having to root for her like redemption or something because it's like, I already know what her story, whatever, I know what's going to happen. And then I don't have to root for her to like not go down a villain route, like a true villain route and be like a Russian spy who collaborates in beheading the queen or something like, you know what I mean? Like she's going to be a frequently disrespectful source of chaos, annoyance, emotional turmoil, disrespect, etc., and not like a comforting, supportive sister. You win some, you lose some. But she's really
Yes.
entertaining.
Mhm.
At least you
Yeah.
don't have the two of them be in love with the same
It,
man yet. I don't want to speak too soon. I don't know what the show's going to do.
no, they haven't done that. So you're
Yeah.
good there.
Yeah. So in
And
that way, Carrie, it is not
well,
like a CW show or MTV or whatever the example was.
yeah.
Okay, so I have a question. So I'm going into season 3. You are on season 4 or about to finish season 4?
I am on the first episode of season 4.
First
I
episode of
mean,
season
like, I'm
4.
almost done with the first episode.
Okay. So, given that and the fact that I think season 5 and 6 are being filmed at the same time, is that right? Or they're
I
going to be
don't
filmed
know.
back to back or something? I don't really know.
That sounds probably.
Sorry, I know it's probably coming across like I'm talking over you, but that's because of the delay. So, given all of that, just looking ahead to just season 3 and 4, I'm starting season 3, you're starting season 4. Should I expect to be delivered what is owed to me, which is a romance? Will they give me a romance? And I understand this is a ridiculous, dumb question because this is based on real people who we really know who they really marry and really end up with and what really happens. So I'm not talking about the fact of like, will they make Charles actually stay faithful to Diana or whatever? Like, I'm not talking about like literally revisionist history, but like, will there at some point, and I'm saying just in seasons 3 and 4, will they at some point, do you think, give me the romance that I would like to see or die? And by die, I mean the men need to die.
So, at least with season 3, if you could just forget that season 1 and 2 Philip exists and just count season 3 Philip as a whole new character, he's very much like a Mr. Knightley type of character at this
Like a
point,
who?
and I can deal with that. Like a Mr. Knightley.
Okay, yeah.
And I can deal with it. I'm okay with that. Um, because like it's not the most warm and loving, it's not like open affection, like, but it's not young love either. So it's very much like they've settled into like a old happy. They married. One of the episodes they celebrate their 25th wedding anniversary. Like they're a happy couple, but it's not the main focus anymore. So the only time we got that relationship as a main focus, they were hating each other. It's great, but the moments they do have are actually quite sweet. So that's nice. If you could just forget that the first book existed.
I'll do my very best.
It's sometimes hard.
Yeah.
Then so season 3, so season 1 took 8 years, season 2 was 8 years, and season 3 was 13 years. So season 3 flies through stuff.
Okay.
So they definitely have mentions of romance, and you see romantic things happen. I would say that there's not like a big romance that you're going to fall in love with, but I feel like the stories that they tell about romances, about love stories, I don't hate them. I think they're interesting. I don't hate one side. There's not a person that's obviously vital. It's just kind of like they're flying through the story to get to Diana. Like they're just season 3 was just let's go from late 60s to the 80s. Almost we're at the 80s just so we can get to Diana. That's where we're going.
Right.
So
fair.
And that so season 3 didn't have Diana, but it was running full speed ahead towards her. So there's not a lot of.
Does season 3 have
romance?
Camilla?
It does. Well, yes, it does.
Okay.
Now
great.
That's later. It's like
should
later
be
in the
towards
season.
The end. Yeah.
Honestly, that resulted in one of my favorite scenes in the show, and it had nothing to do with Charles or Camilla. It had everything to do with Anne.
Thrilled. Can't wait.
Okay. So there's not as much like positive or negative romance drama. I feel like the most drama that does happen kind of does come from, surprisingly, Margaret.
Okay.
She gets a good bit of it. There is some tension with Charles, but it's not his whole thing. I think they were trying to kind of move a lot of stuff along. There wasn't a whole lot of the kids were kind of young at the beginning of season 3 to have the romance, and then they kind of were just running towards season 4 so they could start having romance with the kids. But then the parents were already like more settled, so it wasn't a lot of romance.
So season 4
But the
probably doesn't
storytelling,
cover a lot of years then.
I looked it up because I was curious. It covers 11 years.
Oh, season 4 covers. Okay. Okay.
So season 4 starts in 79 and ends in 90.
Got it. Okay. Where
So
does
it
that?
covers all the Margaret Thatcher years.
Okay. Does it cover? I'm trying to remember my general history. Okay. So let's see. If Harry is now then present day 38, he should have been born in the mid. Okay, so it should cover the birth of Diana's children.
Yes, I am pretty sure. I know,
Season 4 does.
yeah,
Okay. So season
because they
5
would have both
then.
been born in the 80s.
Yeah. So season
Early
5
80s.
is going to pretty quickly cover her death.
I don't know. I don't know how quickly they're going to pump on the brakes. Because if they're going to have 2 more seasons and they're going at like 11 years per season, are we going to end in the 2012s? 2012 or something like that? Or are we going
Season
to see William get married?
That's what I was going to say. Would we I'm sure they
Because
must
that interesting like ending would be like, I just don't know how, if they're going to rush through season 5 and actually kill Diana in 5 and then have 6 for William to meet Kate, or if they're going to slow it down and keep her until season 6.
I wonder if they slow 5 excuse me. I wonder if they slow 5 down a little bit and have 5 somewhat end with her death and then still have her appear in flashbacks in season 6, when they're talking about like tabloids reporting on her, multiple different versions of the story, like all that sort of stuff. If they're showing like new footage of her in season 6, even though she's technically already dead. And then season
I
6, if it's
mean,
still covering the same amount of ground, could end with William and Kate's wedding. But if
because,
they,
so, yeah, that would make season 5, 7 years a bit anchored in 97. And then 11 years for season 6 because they got married in 08.
William and Kate got married in 08.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah. Or they could go back to the 1-2 pattern and do like, 7 years and then 8, like just shorten it a bit. Do 7 years for season 5, 8 years for season 6, and we're just barely showing William and Kate towards the end of it, but we're not showing their wedding yet.
Yeah, that could be it too. I don't know.
Man, if they go beyond season 5 and 6, though, like you're getting into William and Kate, Harry and Meghan territory. I'm sure they'd love to do that.
Yeah. Well, I think it's been said that 6 is the last season. I I don't see them bringing in Meghan. They could bring in Kate, but I really doubt they'll bring in Meghan. And
Why do you think they'd bring
honestly,
in
I doubt
Kate
they
but
want
not
to.
Meghan?
Well, just because timeline.
Makes sense.
Also, I don't like that controversy is still fresh,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't think that they'd be willing to cover that. Because
Fair.
with Kate, there was controversy, but it wasn't like uh, because of anything political. It was just like, because to be honest, from what I've read, it was very much like they took their time trying to decide to get married or not because of what happened with Diana. They dated for like 8 years just because they didn't want to like push it too fast, and they tried to learn from that lesson. Whereas with Meghan, there was a lot of political back like take with it. There's a lot of things being said about her and the implications, and then also, of course, then them moving and now living in the United States or wherever they are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I don't, because they mention politics in the show and stuff, but they don't really go too deep into it. They try not to take a political stance really. They
Mm-hmm.
just kind of talk more about the factual, like, as much as like there's a lot of factual inaccuracies when it comes to politics, they try to just kind of talk about the facts of what happened. So
Right.
like those episodes that it actually gives you like those like text of like this is what happened and like or this is what has continued to happen and because of it, because I don't think they want to try to like state that they have a political opinion or they are trying to at least avoid that.
And I think like an important thing also that would make the wedding of William and Kate important to include in this show is that the show is about the crown and William is
Yes.
going to
Well, that
inherit the
too. I
crown,
mean, obviously,
whereas Harry is not.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, to point that out too, like Charles is way more the focus than any of the other royal siblings. So
Right.
I could see that if they had Prince William and Harry, uh, William would be far more focal than Harry's would be.
Harry would just be a side character because he's not the
Yes.
crown. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Okay, well, we are almost at time, and I do need to subject you to just a little bit of bachelorette talk. It won't be that much, and we'll ease
Okay.
into it by just very briefly mentioning my current I won't say obsession, but just my current interest in terms of scripted live action currently airing ships. And there's so very few, but you're looking at one right now. It's Morgan and Park from The Good Doctor. They are currently delivering me one of my most favorite tropes, which is reluctant roommates. So both of them are semi recently, not really recently, coming out of relationships slash situations wherein they had previously had a live-in partner. So just due to convenience, they're living together and they are very like kind of bickery and silly, and they both have kind of aggressive, abrasive personalities. There's no softy amongst the two of them. Really loving every second of it. Please keep going. You may recall I've been complaining about The Good Doctor for taking away the ship that I really loved, which was basically two softies, and one of them died. So here's hoping that Morgan and Park live long enough to at least give me some good payoff on my forced roommates trope. The bar is on the floor these days.
I'm going to admit something to you that's going to shock you. You ready?
Yes.
In the past few months, I have watched all of Grey's Anatomy.
Really? I've never watched Grey's Anatomy. Were you thrilled when what was the big
I
shippy
swore I
moment
would
that
never
happened?
would.
What now?
I swore I never would.
Right? Like it doesn't seem like
Quarantine
a Kate
does.
show to
Breaks
watch.
you.
What are your ships on
It
Grey's
one that
Anatomy? Sorry, I know we're talking over each other.
I
It's the delay.
I was just yeah, I was just I watched it because I wanted something that I didn't have to fully focus on and do other things. Um, I of course liked Mare and Derek. Eh. Uh, I liked Joe and Alex, but if you know what happened there, I'm still mad about that.
Oh,
Oh,
hold on. I think I
Joe is
do
my
know what
favorite
happened.
character.
Did one of them like run off with their sister or something? Or she ran off with her brother?
No, so Joe came on in like season 9, and now she's my favorite character. But Alex has been there since day one. He got married in like season 5, and she left him. That was a complicated situation.
Okay.
Then all of a sudden, I think something had to do with the actor. And after season 16, he just disappeared. And they wrote in like a fake letter to all these other characters, and I had a whole episode of them reading letters. Him saying that he found out he had kids with this ex-wife, and now he's going to go live with the ex-wife. I'm like, what?
Oh.
Because he just married, just like 2 seasons beforehand, had just married the girl Joe. So now they were happy together, and all of a sudden, Alex is like, yeah, I'm gonna go. I just found out I have 2 kids I didn't know about, and now I'm gonna go be their dad. and it's so bad because like you can't hate him for wanting to be there for his kids, but you can hate him for leaving his wife with abandonment issues. I'm like,
Right.
I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it.
It sounds terrible. And here's the thing, it's a Shonda show. So we're excited for Bridgerton's coming out this
Oh yeah.
Christmas, right? Right, guys?
Yes.
Right? Good.
I found out
Good.
that's based on a book, and I'm going to read it, and then we're going to talk about all the ways that they ruined it.
That'll be perfect. I'll just not read the book and then like we can have the book perspective and the non-book
Okay.
perspective. It will be as if it's like an Arrow discussion with like a comic fan versus an Arrow only fan where I'm like,
I don't
"No, I
want to be
loved
a
this. This
comic
is the best
fan.
ship." And you and you're going to be like, "No, according to the books, the Bridgerton crown was supposed to go to the Black Canary." And I'll be like, "But in the TV show she sucks."
I feel like that was really shady.
Just like as an example, like I don't know the Bridgerton character's name, so I just threw, something out there.
Bridgerty Smoke, Black Canary, like this is who it is, right?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Really excited to talk about that. In the last minute left, I will put The Bachelorette up on the screen. And it's actually not The Bachelorette. It's the two guys that are fighting over her that are literally so annoying. So here's the thing. I'm all on The Bachelor and Bachelorette. I'm all about rewarding drama. Please fight. Please be like complete, dramatic assholes and cause mass chaos. And please don't eliminate the people fighting because I want to be entertained more than I want the lead to find love. And that's just the reality, right? However, the two gentlemen, a term I use so loosely here that you see on screen, are Noah and Bennett from The Bachelorette, and they are the source of all the drama. And for all the world, I cannot figure out why this drama is even like making the episodes. Like there's other better drama, and I know that there's other better drama because the guy, that she cut this week, we barely saw like just a few minutes of their date, and then she cut him during the date, and I was like, that was really shocking because normally you don't like that's normally people don't get cut after a one-on-one date. They get cut after like cocktail parties or whatever, where like either they didn't resonate with, especially this early on with so many people, they either didn't resonate with her, whatever. This guy seemed like he had great chemistry with her early on. Like he was just really funny and charming and nice. Whatever, like he seemed like one of the better ones. And she cut him from the date. And so like obviously something is not making it into the final episode because there's certain moments that are not making sense. There's certain bromances between some of the guys that I'm like, I didn't see the lead up for that. There's certain there's just things getting cut, and somehow these two guys, their drama is making, and it's literally the dumbest thing ever. The guy in the dark jacket is like literally 25 or like some ridiculously young age, clearly just came on to do this whole like character shtick of like, I'm from Oklahoma and I have a mustache and I'm young and I like to be the wild card that tries to jump into group date. And it's just like really dumb. He doesn't do it very well, but like whatever. And then the other guy who's like, looks like he's cosplaying Superman, his whole shtick is like, I'm really rich and I have a chateau in the French Alps, and I'm very clearly trying to audition to be the Bachelor, even though he's never going to be the Bachelor because he's old, not as rich as what he seems, and just frankly not very good in front of the camera. Like they're both just very like stilted and scripted in how they're delivering things, and so they had this whole like drama between them that's been going on for like 2 weeks that is completely insipid, is taking away from me being able to track who Tayshia's actually caring about. Last I checked, she's not even sure she wants to keep me. And that's just really hard to have to handle when I'm having to watch her deal with these two guys. So I just really need her. to cut both of them, because this is the one who, as the person who watches these shows and I'm like, reward the drama, like I'm like the devil on their shoulder being like, no, keep the girls that are causing drama in the house, cut the boring kindergarten teacher, keep the guys that are causing drama in the house, and cut the boring, financial analyst or whatever. In this case, I'm like, no, please cut them. Please cut them. Please listen. Like, for once, let's stop rewarding drama. Thank you for listening to my pitch, Tasha.
I'm sorry she doesn't let you know that you get to stay.
I know, it's just like so hard, and like I feel like we have something special, and like every moment I get to spend with her is just feels like the greatest moment ever. And like knowing that she has relationships with all of the other men in the house just like really eats me away. But I know we have something special, and it's just like trusting the process and like just continuously just like showing up and like being transparent and vulnerable is like really what's going to like make our love grow. I really miss The Bachelor, because there's way more girls on it, and you get to hear that with like a lot more convincing. My camera's out of focus. That's fine. It doesn't recognize me either. You get to hear all of that with like a lot more like convincing pitch. So The Bachelor returns in January, where I don't have to watch as many guys on screen. So that's great. Sorry that I kept everybody 4 minutes overtime. I will take away the ugly boys on screen, and I will say same time, same place next week to discuss season 3 and 4.
Should be.
Yes, sounds good. All right. I will talk to you later then. Bye.
Bye.